We're staying on this topic for a moment. Yeah, Chad.
Okay, but like that sort of goes along with the entire theme of the book. How they'll sort of like get built up on a dream or something being really great, but then when they finally realize the reality, it's never what it seems. Sort of like what just happened with the father, because they had a new hope, but then when he actually gets here, they realize that he's still the same old man that he was. And sort of the same thing with the chocolates. They think it's going to be all great and stuff, but then you already ate half of them, so it's...
Can anyone think, because that's a great point, but this theme that seems to exist from the beginning of hopefulness, things are going to be just fine, and then the rug's pulled out from under a character. Can anyone think of any other examples of when that's happened? We'll go with Mark and then Jacob.
Well, when they went to Ireland in end of chapter 1, that was probably the most epically failing decision of their lives. It's like, let's go back to a country stricken with poverty, and let's try to grow and prosper there, even though it's also the alcohol city, and the dad's already an alcoholic, and this can not get worse at all.
And you're right, that was in chapter 1. Yeah. We're going home. We're going home to family. We're going home to friends. Grandma opens the door and says, "Hi." Great, you're back. Yes, Mark.
Well, she didn't really particularly want to go over there. It was like the mean old cousins that sort of forced her over here.
Correct. To be fair. And Jacob, you're going to add?
I was going to add, for instance, the headmaster tells him what a great student he is, and he recommends him to go to the Christian Brothers. And he goes to the church, and they slam the door in his face. So, from a reader's point of view, it's like, hey, this is a big turning point in his life. He's going to get an education and go somewhere in life, and the church slams the door in his face.
We need to come back to that theme in a moment, because that's a great point. Riri?
Or when he had his job with Mr. O'Halloran,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything was going good, and he was so excited because he got to provide for his family. That's what he thought. He thought he was finally being the man of the family, and then Mr. O'Halloran had to go to the doctor, and his mom wouldn't let him do it anymore, so his dream kind of got crushed again.
So, as we read and we're thinking of the eternal themes of the book, the universal appeal of the book, is anyone picking up a trend, and do you predict this trend to continue?
Well, I think the main trend is just the dream versus reality, and he has to keep coming to grips with his actual situation, but he wants to believe in a dream. His main dream is to go to not London, but just have his own family and provide for the family, and then everything be good, but then he still lives in this reality with a poor family, and they're all dying, so he sort of tries to put himself in that dream when he can't really cope with what he's actually dealt with.
Great point. Okay, let's segue for a moment. And regarding your thinking notes for this chapter, were there any double question marks? Any situations where you were thinking, why did that just happen? What's going on there? Brooke?
Well, Dad comes home and says he's a changed man, and then the next day he leaves. Right as on Christmas Day he leaves.
How did that impact anyone as a reader when that occurred? Sarah?
Well, when he came, you thought everything was going to get better, whatever. He was going to have an explanation as to why there wasn't money coming. Maybe he would, they were giving him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he wasn't drinking the money, but he didn't have an explanation. The very next day he left. So I don't know. I thought he was going to turn everything around, but.
So you, again, had that hopeful sense.
Yeah.
Of course, his physical demeanor, his physical appearance when he arrives at home was a kind of an indicator that, good old dad's same old dad, perhaps. Mark?
And that's one of my questions, how did he get his black eye and all that?
Yeah, any predictions on that as to what might have occurred, Meredith?
Well, I would assume that he got drunk and got in a fight with something, or, fell, something like that. But still having to do with him being drunk. Because that seems to be a major part of his character. He's drunk a lot. So.
Let's stay on that idea for a moment. With Dad's character, he's a bit of an ironic guy. What do I mean by that? What is the irony of Dad? Meredith, will stay with you?
Well, he won't take anything from anyone. People try to help them, and he's like, no, I can do it on my own. But he won't provide for his family. He just drinks the money away.
Right. Anybody want?
Like in the earlier chapters, like he would get a job, and he'd keep the job for like a week, but then on Friday he'd get drunk, and he'd miss work on Saturday, then he'd lose the job.
Right.
That's just a repeating thing.
A lot of hands raised over here. Jesse.
One thing that I've noticed is whenever he gets drunk, almost every time he comes home and like wakes up the children and makes them like promise him all these things.
Right.
Then like Frank hears a bunch of things about like different promises that people want him to make to them. So it kind of puts Frank in an odd position between either the church, or dying for the church, and dying for Ireland.
Great. That's a great point. And Lauren?
I feel like he like really like tries though sometimes, you know, like he tries and then he just kind of like gives up.
This is the father.
Mm-hmm.
What would be an example of that, or is it kind of what Jesse was saying in that regard of coming home? You know, this trying to instill with his kids, don't be a taker, be a doer.
Yeah.
But as we read, we look at him and think, you're the taker. You're definitely not a doer. But is that what you mean when you say he tries?
Yeah, like he'll like say like he'll like tell him like good morals and stuff, and like don't take anything from anybody, and then he'll get a job and he'll try to get a job, but then once he gets a job, he just like doesn't even try to keep it.
That's a good point. Cameron.
With what Anna Laurie said, he would try by going on long walks into the country, work with the farmers for hours, but then by the end of the day he would just go and drink the money away. He would give up by the end of the day.
That's it, about give up by the end of the day. That's an interesting way of putting that. Sounds like it'd be a good title for a song about this whole pathetic parent that is dad. Kelsey.
I think like in some sense it's kind of selfish because like he's got a family at home that like doesn't have any food or like any cold or anything to make a fire to cook anything, and he's just out at the pub drinking, and it's just like he's not thinking of his family and thinking about like the new baby who doesn't have any milk or anything, and the money that the family sent he spent drinking it, and the baby could have starved, and he didn't think about it. He was very selfish and just drank all the money. So
Yeah.
that kind of gets me because like he should have been thinking about his family.
It's painful. It's painful at times to read. Riri?
Yeah, piggybacking on what Kelsey said, like, I don't know why that, like, the dad can't realize that, like, his family needs him, because, like, usually in Ireland, how it's talking, like, it's usually the dad that brings in the money, and, like, it's always the dads that support the family. And, like, he knows all this, but, like, he can't support his family. And he always talks to his children, like Jess said, about dying for Ireland, and, like, he has respect for himself and all this, like, he won't take anything from anybody. But, like, he doesn't have enough, like, respect for his wife and his children to, like, not drink and provide for them. You know what I mean?
What, like, as you read this, I know you guys think about this book a lot. This weekend, we went with, Edward had a tennis tournament down in Auburn, and we stayed at a Hampton Inn, and they had free breakfast. It's a little bit of a story, but they had boiled eggs for breakfast. And, of course, you know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I'm looking at Stella just picks the little yolk off and leaves a little ball. I mean, she eats the white and leaves the little balls of yolk. But I'm thinking there's great nourishment in the egg. Yeah. All I can think about is this egg. That's all I can think about because of this book and the praise played on the egg. But do you find when you read about Frank's dad, does anyone find that having read that you're thankful for your position at home, or you consider your role between your father and yourself, having read the role that Frank has with his father? I just wonder, does anybody think about that? Victoria?
Like, reading the book, it really makes you think about how, like, we have things way better than other people do, and it makes you really think about life. Like, we shouldn't be ungrateful for the things that we have because some people don't have it as good as we do.
Yeah. As you see, as Frank interacts with his family, do you apply that sentiment as well to like your family, like just the love that you have with your family and how so you find yourself connecting with him in that way or any way?
Like, he has love for his brothers and his mom more than his dad because his dad's not in his life in like any way.
Right.
Because he's always at the club drinking away the money, and when he does come home, he wakes them up from their sleep and makes them promise to do these things. And like in the book, you can tell that Frank doesn't really like to do these, but he has no choice.
That's a great point. Well, because of the absence of his father, and his mother's kind of, she's there, but how is she really there? Jacob?
Yeah, the mom is just kind of like reminiscing and feeling bad about her situation. Like, I think the whole reason it's called Angela's Ashes because she's constantly looking at the ashes of the fire.
Yeah, it seems like anytime there's a situation of a frustrating situation, the way she resolves it is to just go and stare at the ashes of the fire. But so with Dad missing and with Mom staring in the ashes of the fire, what does Frankie have to resort to learn about life? How does Frankie become educated at all? A lot of hands up. Max?
Trial and error mostly.
Trial and error, great example. Like from the text, can you think of a point where that occurred?
When Frankie had the job with Mr. O'Halloran, it's sad because he wants to work for his family, wants to be the man of the family and bring in all the money because his father's not there.
Right.
But the sad part is every single great opportunity that he has had is just shut off from him.
One way or another.
So
right.
That leads him to do other things, and so eventually he gets to a point where he's starting to learn things, but then he's still got so much more to learn.
Okay, Chairman.
Okay, well, after he loses the jobs and he loses all the respectable jobs basically and ways to bring in money, he turns to stealing, and then he just talks about how he's like losing his religion basically, and so he's starting to turn away from all the things like in his childhood, and like with the books that he read, he learns about reality as opposed to what he has been told as a child, and so he starts to live like stealing and doing other things that weren't considered good in his childhood because he realizes it's what he has to do to support his family and himself.
I mean, if you didn't have any adult figure to raise you, where would you learn? I mean, how would one learn about life?
Well, I mean, basically what I think he does is he just goes to the library and looks up stuff in the dictionary.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to find out what something means, he has to go in the dictionary. He wants to find out about things in life, yeah, he has to read about them in the library.
What's interesting is his relationship with Shakespeare. Shakespeare is something that's mentioned a lot in the book, and in this chapter, in chapter 12, he refers to going to Mrs. Purcell's and listening to Macbeth play from her window, and so not only through the radio does he learn of Macbeth and Shakespeare, but he also learns of Duke Ellington and all these other composers and singers. He doesn't know who they are, but he's just so moved by them. Did anyone find that interesting or take any notes or commentary on his relationship with like entertainment, pop culture, or anything like that? Yes.
Well, he really appreciates literature, and I mean, like from looking at him and the way he was raised, you'd think he's like pretty like illiterate and like uneducated.
Right.
But then like you see how mature his views are of like literature and like books like Shakespeare and how much he appreciates it, and you realize he's probably like a little bit more mature than what you realize he is.
That's a great point. Barry?
Yeah, going on what Kelsey said, like at school, his teachers always say that like he's so smart and he should go above and beyond everyone else, like that he can do that. And like when he was supposed to be in the 5th class, like when he wrote that essay about God, Jesus and the weather, like his teacher realized that he was so talented and he was so good that he got moved up a class. And so like I agree with Kelsey, like you would think he would not be smart and he'd barely be able to read and all, but he's actually in reality he's very smart and very educated and like.
Yeah, and Lauren?
When he was listening to the radio, and I forgot what he was listening to, like the news or something, and he was just like imagining like all the great things that he would do in his life.
What about?
Really good imagery.
Yeah. Mark?
Well, you know the phrase, there's a silver lining behind every cloud?
Yes, sir.
Well, it seems like in the Angela's Ashes that it's just that none of them can actually just get through the cloud.
Yeah.
It's like especially the dad. He's like, oh, it's foggy. Oh, it's foggy in here. I better turn around. Who cares about the silver lining?
Good point. Let's move into chapter 13. To me, chapter 13 is one of the most frustrating chapters of the book. Kelsey, you have something to add on that?
Okay, well, when they moved in with the cousin,
Kind of, Elena Griffin